Welcome back, guys, to the DroneOn Show. Dude, special guest with us today. I don't know how it's going to go yet, but I'm sure we're going to get into some juicy situations about, using spray drones and normal aerial application, I would say, helicopters or airplanes. Eugene, if you want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background about, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Eugene Pinelli. I'm out of Bakersfield, California, in Kern County, Central California. And, this last summer, I decided to transition. I've been lifelong, ag and fresh produce career. Decided to get into aerial applications, primarily using drones. And I worked with a crop dusting outfit. They have airplanes, helicopters, and they were starting to integrate drones into their operation. And so I was the drone pilot working alongside, the helicopter and the airplanes.
Nice. And all of your operations was done in California?
Yeah, all in Kern and Tulare counties, just north of us.
Okay. Dude, I'm going to California on Monday, close to the Sacramento area. Holy smokes, the fields there look mind-blowingly huge compared to what we have here in Ohio. I mean, if we get in a 25 to 30 acre field, we think we're doing good. But those fields over there, just looking at it on Google Maps, looks crazy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ag out here. There's a ton of ag out here, a lot of well-managed, large fields, ton of acreage. Yeah, there's definitely quite a bit out here.
So how many acres did you end up getting covered with your drones? And with that, what drones were you running?
We were running two T50s and one at a time. Ran about 2,000 acres this summer, and looking to upgrade my fleet and go out on my own exclusively using drones. And so I'm starting that process right now.
So how the farmers or the customers that you guys have been working for in the past, how are they adapting to spray drones? Like, what's making them want to use the spray drone?
It's kind of a case by case basis. I think what we've seen with the crop dusting outfit is they were wanting to integrate the drone as a way to get in places that they couldn't get into, cover edges, overflow. If I was, the owner of crop dusting outfit, that's exactly how I'd do it. I'd use my planes and my helicopters and use the drones for the edges and the places they can't go. And that's exactly what we did this summer. It was great. There was, places that they had been into. For instance, there was a field, we were doing some corn, and there was just wires everywhere, just power lines everywhere. And they had previously done that with a helicopter. I remember it was a long day, and I just remember, talking to the pilot saying, how did you do that in a helicopter? How did you fly in and out of there? Because I'm not in the aircraft and I'm stressed out the whole day.
Yeah. So you guys aren't necessarily using the drones to cover the whole fields. You're just cleaning up the corners and the edges.
Nope. Typically, I would get the whole field. I worked, this summer during the busy season. So typically we'd kind of look at everything we had, and I would either get the more difficult fields, or if everything was kind of more or less accessible, they would just give me, 50, 70, 100 acre feet, and I would cover that. Yeah.
Okay. And that was with T50s. How, I don't know if you've seen much on the T100s yet with the 26-gallon tank. What volume are you guys usually spraying at? Is it same as us when we're doing fungicide, 2 to 3 gallon work?
No. So that's the thing out here in California. We primarily saw 5 to 10 gallon work. And I think that's why it's a little bit tough to do, to use, drones. And so that's primarily why
that's
not, competing. And so having the T100s is going to be huge out here. As these drones get bigger, you're going to see more drones out here.
Large volume, 5 to 10 gallon work. That's a lot of gallons per acre for a 10-gallon drone. That's for sure.
A long day. A real long day.
So what type of product are you spraying on these, these crops that are needing that high volume?
So I think it's not too different from what you guys are doing over there. There's quite a bit of, dairies out here. I think we've got like 500,000 head of, dairy cattle, or dairy cows between Kern and Tulare County. So there's, a lot to feed them. A lot of corn, a lot of alfalfa. There's even, there's been a big downturn over the last, 30 years in cotton, but there's still quite a bit of cotton acreage out here. We've seen things like beans and some of the things that I think will start to provide crop protection for in as these drones get bigger. What we've seen is grape rootstock. There's plenty of vineyards out here, and there's a ton of tree nuts. So we've got pistachios and almonds, hundreds of thousands of acres of those things. As like I said, we're able to get more down, with bigger drones. I think there's going to be more use in those fields.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of like when you're not in an area, you don't think about it. But like when I think of California, I definitely don't think of huge crop fields. That is for sure. I would say when I think of California, I don't know if you're like this, Landon, but I'm thinking Hollywood, like make movies there. So to hear that you're doing, huge fields with drones, and that California is a big ag state, it's pretty interesting to hear what all you guys have out there.
I mean, I think they refer to the Central Valley where I'm at as the breadbasket of the nation. We not only provide so much to the nation, it's to the world. There's a lot of exports out of here. We are one thing I failed to mention was carrots. So we grow the most acreage of carrots. If you go to the grocery store right now, I'm sure you're going to see one of the two main companies is selling all the carrots in your store, and they're probably grown out of here. If they're not, it's probably a subsidiary of one of those two companies. So ton of carrots, and then, all your table grapes, all your tree nuts, they're all from out here.
Wow. Okay, so you were working with traditional aerial application airplanes and helicopters. Do they see you as competition?
I think so. Working directly with them, I think there was a little bit of a biased nature. I think that the pilots, insist that we're not a threat to them. And, I'll tell you, when you're standing on top of a trailer and you're next to a helicopter that just completely buzzes by you, I kind of saw that myself. It was like one of the things that was mentioned on that podcast about, man being better than drones is payload capacity and the speed at which they could fly. I mean, it's just unparalleled. But I think they start to see it. They won't admit to it, but I think they know that we are competition. And as technology advances, the drones get bigger. We're gonna.
Yeah, I go back to my tree climbing days. Like I'm an arborist. I climb trees, and there's definitely this thing about equipment's never going to replace me, because I was really good at climbing and taking trees down with cranes and stuff. And then these other cranes came along that like had these elbows, and they actually grab a hold of the tree way up high and cut it off and then bring it down like that. I almost feel like, and this is not trying to bash the pilots, it almost feels like it's and it's good. It's a brotherhood, and they want to hold the line and keep it, keep their industry as long as they can, because of technology that's moving their way. And I think, and I was feeding into it a little myself when I started with my content is, we're coming for you. But I don't think it has to be that way. I do think that as companies that are traditional aerial application using airplanes or helicopters are going to start adapting the equipment that is coming up the line, that is going to probably at some point cover more acres than an airplane.
I think so.
Not the same machine, right? Like let me make myself clear. Not one machine to one airplane. It takes many machines to do what one airplane does, but the cost, I think, that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I would agree. As the drones get bigger and airplanes and helicopter become more cost prohibitive, you will see, a shift. And if I had airplanes and helicopters, I would definitely integrate drones into my operation. It just makes every bit of sense.
Yeah. And let's be honest, that is super dangerous. Like that job, I mean, every year there's pilots dying from doing that type of work. Yes, we will crash drones, but at least it's not losing lives doing this.
Yeah. No, in my when I worked outside of the aerial application industry, I watched a plane go down, I don't know, about 500 yards from me. And with
no way
here where we're at, I've seen, I think we definitely have a shortage of pilots. There's just
when you seen that plane, was the pilot okay?
No, he passed. We were right next to an airport, and something happened at takeoff, and he went down. So
wow. So he was max gross weight probably, and there was just not enough airspeed to carry.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics on it. I just remember seeing the fire trucks, head through our field, and I was going to head out there to see what was going on. And once I figured it out, I turned around.
Wow. That's like the guy that gave me my first big opportunity in spray drones is a helicopter spray pilot. And he's freaking good. He is known as one of the best helicopter pilots to spray fields. But he already 3 years ago was like, Mike, I'm slowly trying to adopt the technology, because even though he knows he's as good as he is, and one machine, one drone's never going to do what he can do himself, he knows that many drones will do what he does. And he's like, Mike, we fly so on the edge all the time that it's not, if you crash, it's basically kind of like it's when you crash and how bad is it.
Yeah, no, that's certainly the case. And disease pressure and crop protection is a lot of times comes from the edges, and the edges are where the danger's at. So
yeah,
there's definitely something to that.
So how'd you get in aerial application with that company originally? What made you apply for a job or?
So what happened was, I, like I said, I was always involved in agriculture and farming. And, when I was outside of aerial applications, the farming company I was working for had gotten involved in aerial imagery. They were using manned aircraft to do multispectral thermal imagery, and we were starting to look at drones. And, as I learned more about that, I started to believe in the future of that imagery, diagnosing crop health through, the multispectral imagery. And so I started on a path of looking to provide that service, manned aircraft with, very high dollar camera equipment can do a good job. But as, these DJI products and some of the other products, doing multispectral thermal imagery, they can get equivalent level imagery by flying at a lower altitude. So I started to try to talk to farmers that I knew and network. And, I kind of hit a roadblock in doing that. I think a lot of growers would say to me, what do I need those images for? I can just walk my field and diagnose it. And to be honest, I don't think that they're wrong in saying that. I think there's a little bit of growth that the technology needs, processing and doing all that with the imagery is a lot of work. And then you need, agronomists and crop consultants to be willing to look at that imagery and interpret that for the grower. And so that whole disconnect kind of, led me to believe that there wasn't, maybe a living in it, but I do believe in the future. So just about as I was about to throw in the towel, a crop consultant mentioned to me, he said, I know these guys, they're using drones. They've got airplanes and helicopters, but they're starting to use drones. You should talk to them. And so I reached out, and my understanding from the farming side was that drones couldn't carry a payload. They had short flight times. It just wasn't quite there. And so when I talked to the crop dusters, they said, hey, we're looking for a pilot. Why don't you come out and check it out sometime? And I remember we went out there. It was a squash field, so 40-acre squash field. And I'm driving out there, and just as I'm, getting to the field, I see this just massive drone laying down. I think they were doing 5 gallons an acre, maybe 10. And it was funny. It was a job interview for me, but I had a hard time like holding back my like childhood grin. I was just like, this is so cool. Yeah. And I had to do everything. It took everything from me to just not offer myself, the services for free to pilot that aircraft. But the big takeaway for me there was, yes, there isn't a large flight time. There isn't, a big payload, but you can land that 50. You can swap the battery and you can fill that thing up in just a minute and be back in the sky.
Yeah. So that was my biggest thing, like not understanding the equipment is not realizing that it's a bunch of small loads often. So in the field, back. And so I like to tell guys this, or I say it all the time. It's there's a saying, many hands make light work. I just say many drones make light work. The more you go, the quicker it gets done, and the more drones you have, the easier it is. 5 to 10 gallon work, I will say, though. If you have a 10-gallon drone, that's going to be lots of loads. But battery, I mean, doggone, you're probably getting how many loads per battery if you're doing 10-gallon work.
Yeah, I mean, with the right generator and 3 or 4 batteries, you're really not really pressing those batteries too often. You're basically inefficient, or you make a mistake if you have to wait for those batteries to catch up.
Talking about that, the system, what system are you running as far as charger system and generator?
So at the time we were running the Kubota, I think it was a 14,000, I
Okay.
believe.
Yep.
4 batteries typically. We'd use 3 and just had one just in case, and then the one T50. We
Okay.
had 4 nozzle system, and typically, as long as things were safe, flying full speed.
What were you using, a C8000 or a C10,000 charger?
It was an 8,000.
Okay.
We had 8,000 and 2 the charging cradles,
Yeah.
and we were able to keep up.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If you're doing that heavy volume, that's good. Yeah. Because my systems, all the systems that I set up, I just do the whole DJI ecosystem: generator, drone, batteries, chargers, the whole 9 yards. A lot of guys don't like the DJI generators because they're loud. There is no doubt they are definitely loud, but they supercharge the batteries for sure. If you're doing 2 to 3 gallon work, you got to have that charge speed. But for your situation, it sounds like the C8000 is no problem with that heavy volume. So that's good.
We did have a time where we used the DJI generator, and I can tell you, yeah, I mean, definitely, not having issues with the battery, it was much better to use the diesel and not have that noise.
Yep. That being said, I do believe that the 14,000 generator, I don't know, did you ever have DJI generator issues with the DC module or anything like that? Because
Not with the DC module, we did have some issues. We needed to get I believe it was the fuel. There was a sensor we needed to replace.
okay, yep.
Yeah.
We had on the 12,000, the generator you were running, probably, we had more issues with that. But since the 14,000, I was running with the T60X. Pretty impressed with the changes that they've made. Is like they seen where the weak points were, and it feels like they re-engineered some of those on the 14,000. So I'm curious to see how it lasts. But the T60 has definitely, it worked better, but it's still friggin' loud. I'm trying to figure out how to tone down that noise. But again, if you can get away with a diesel generator running the way you're running, that's the way to go, because obviously they don't have to run such high RPMs
it's well worth
gas. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing is, when you get into this business, it's like people use you trying to get in cost effectively, and then some guys approach us about a DJI generator, or not just a DJI generator, but a diesel generator, and the cost of a diesel generator is substantially more money if you look at it per kilowatt and weight on it. But yeah, that's cool to hear that you have no problem with your charging solution. So since you were running the T50s, are you looking, what are you looking to do with your business? Are you looking to scale, add more drones, add bigger drones, more trailers?
I want to go with the T100. I think, I recently got my 137, and I'm trying to decide, just with everything that's going on, I do believe DJI offers the best solution. They have the best drones. I think there's other solutions on the horizon that I think you mentioned before on your podcast. We want to go American, but I don't know that we're quite there yet. So I want to do what's best for the grower and what's best for my business. And so, I want to stay in the DJI ecosystem. I hope that can work until we have, better and more safer options.
Yeah. Yep. Did you try and demo any other models out there that were not DJI?
Oh, I've been out there and seen, the XAG. There's another, recently went to see an American manufacturer, and it looks great. But
the one that was painted yellow?
Yeah.
Oh, you were at that event?
I was at, not the one back east. There was one they did out here in Salinas, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I went to the one in Vermont when they released it there, the 40-gallon drone, but the prototype they had there was only a 35-gallon drone at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it's
one that I saw.
Looking at that platform, I think it has a chance, has a long road ahead of it. Just putting some equipment together and having a drone that looks like it functions is one thing. Having it be reliable and user friendly, and the user interface is probably going to be the biggest battle that somebody has getting into this industry.
Yeah, I think software is a big part of this stuff, and with all this technology, the best way to weed out bugs is to have a large amount of users identifying issues and reporting back to the manufacturer. And so,
Yep.
I hope that there is a solution outside of this, what we're dealing with DGI. But the best way to have a successful, reliable solution is to have just that. And so we're going to need a lot of guys to hop on board with another platform and work with the manufacturer to weed out the bugs. I don't
Yeah.
know
But
how
the biggest problem with hopping on another system is reliability, because you know how important it is if we're going out there and we got the farmer's, product mixed up and we have drones go down because of unknown reasons. That's going to affect not only us as a applicator business, but the farmer as well, because he needs his stuff done and he needs it done now. So that's my biggest problem about adopting a new technology, is the reliability of it. Just getting it to the point where it doesn't break down when you're in the field.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be on the cutting edge, but not the razor's edge is something I've learned.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm not going to be the one to learn from the mistakes. But hopefully the manufacturer can work with operators and themselves to invest and weed out the bugs.
Yeah. That my biggest thing is that I'd like the listeners to hear this is, if you are going to adopt a new drone, do not sell your old fleet. That's my most important thing. Is I have no problem in somebody switching, right? Like going to whatever new drone that they want to go to. But if you sell your old equipment and you go all in and something goes sideways, like I know that some companies had this happen with a drone that they switched to. Then it took them so long to either get the problem resolved or, buy new drones. It's not a good idea to switch. Let's say you're a DJI system like you are, selling both of your T50s and going and buying two other models, because say something goes wrong with, that new model, you literally have no way of getting your product onto your customers' fields. So anybody listening, be very careful if you're going to do that, just because we haven't seen enough to see how reliable they are. So, what's the spray season like in California in your area? Like, what's the window look like?
So California does have, benefit unlike other regions is we do go year round. I would
Oh
say
my gosh, that's
I
sweet.
haven't got experienced a winter. I don't expect to do, more than 5 or 10% of my business between, now and March or April, but there is a spray season during those months. So we are able to, there's a lot of herbicide work available, and there's, like I said, there's, alfalfa is going a few times. They're turning that quite a bit. Um,
So, have you personally sprayed alfalfa?
I have.
Why would they use an aerial application over just ground rigs and alfalfa?
It's a good question. I don't know. They typically, in the experiences I've had with alfalfa, they were either, commissioning the helicopter or the airplane, and either it was a tough spot to get to, or, it was kind of an overflow job for me. But yeah, we run into that a lot. The growers are going to want to use their ground rigs. And so, maybe the stage of growth that it's in,
Okay. Yeah,
that
I didn't know if the grower had talked to you, when my alfalfa is this tall and I run through it with my ground rig, I'm damaging this much, which is causing me to lose something, and that's why he wants to use the aerial. I wasn't sure, because like beans, if you're doing soybeans here, farmers are starting to go to aerial application, drones specifically, because it's moving the canopy around. They're getting a better coverage than you would with a ground rig, and they don't have to crush their crop. And they say that they lose about 4 bushels to the acre if they're running over it. So I wasn't sure if there's a calculation like that with alfalfa or not.
I could definitely say, we did some beans, and that was probably one of the biggest crops where the grower actually came back to us and they said, we love the drone. We want to stick with the drone.
Nice.
So there's not many beans out here where we're at, but where they are at, we'll definitely be, targeting those with drones.
So back to the old aerial company that you were working for, did they do any night applications?
So I think they're starting to stray away from that. There was some limited applications that they did with helicopter, but I see that's one of the biggest advantages of the drone is the ability to do night applications, and I think that's
Yeah.
where there's that. I think the drone is going to take the opportunities that the airplane and the helicopters can't, and that's going to be night opportunities, scheduling opportunities, things like that. But night is one of the big advantages of using the drone.
Yeah, I agree. How much night did you do?
Not very much.
Okay.
So typically, not very much. We were geared up for it. Unfortunately, one of our biggest night jobs, we had a technical issue, thankfully, before we did any mixing. So I didn't get to do much of that, but I do know, talking to growers and getting feedback, there are definitely pests that are more easily targeted at night. And we're gearing up to be ready to do night applications. And I think that's a huge advantage and a big marketing opportunity for me.
Yeah. I will say for myself, I did probably most of my fungicide application this year in Kentucky running at night. One, because not nearly as much wind. If we were doing insecticide, and we didn't do hardly any insecticide, just a few fields here and there, you wouldn't have to deal with bees, killing off bees because they're not out at night. And then the other reason is it's much cooler. It's a lot better working environment than being out there in the blazing hot sun. And according to some of our growers, farmers were saying that they prefer night operations because it's more effective. But that's probably controversial because some people say that they don't want to spray if there's going to be dew on the plants. But
Yeah,
anyhow.
I can't speak on the fungicide. I do know that in the vineyards and the tree nuts, there are definitely some pests, when it comes to insecticides that are more easily targeted at night, in addition to, not dealing with the bees. So there's definite advantages.
I'm curious to see how it goes when we go to California. I think he has mostly nut trees out there. Want to see how many gallons an acre he's going to do. That type of operation, he's going to have. I think he's going to run everything off of RTK. Centimeter precision accuracy. You probably don't have to run RTK with most of the applications you're doing.
We haven't really needed to, no. It would have been nice, but no.
Yeah. What's your trailer setup look like?
So going into this upcoming season, I'm looking to build something. I'm trying to build a flatbed on like a 5500. I think.
Okay.
We needed 4-wheel drive more often than I'd like. So I'd like to be on a setup like that. The only limitation there is, capacity. So, a 5500 with as much capacity as we can get on it. And we're going to pull like a small water trailer, I think is the best option starting out. Unfortunately, there are some restrictions in California. I think we have a lower weight limit before we have to get a CDL, and there's not exemptions. There's exemptions for growers, but there's not exemptions for hire custom applicators.
Okay.
So, as the business, if it gets rolling in, we're going to have to take a look at that and probably do a gooseneck application.
Cool. So you mentioned a truck build out. I went to the end user spray conference last year and did a lot of podcasts where I was just sitting down having conversations just like we are now with applicators. And my thing was like, I was thinking a trailer is for everyone, but I quickly found out that is not accurate. Lots of pickup truck setups, and hoping to release soon. Don't hold me to this, but in the next few months, I will be releasing something that's not been released yet for pickup trucks, and I think it's going to change how applicators like yourself are going to get stuff done. So I'm excited to do that. Because, like yourself, you're going to build something, and I'm really curious to know that if what I'm building would work for a guy like yourself. But let's just say that it hasn't been built yet, and it will be able to fit in any standard dually pickup. And the whole solution, the whole package, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I would encourage that. If I've learned anything, growers like to grow on their land. They don't want to build giant, wide roads. And I can understand that, but from the operational side, it makes things difficult. So it's good to be able to get in there.
Yeah, that's cool. So you have 2 drones, but mostly were you flying one at a time or staggering them in your app?
never swarmed. There was a couple times we worked with a grower that had their own drone, so we would kind of split the field in half and kind of work like that off the same mixing
Okay.
tank. But no, never swarmed. I'm looking to do that this upcoming season, depending on the equipment available and the need.
I'm curious to know, is there a lot of red tape in California, like outside of like needing your, commercial pesticide applicators license, your Part 107, your 137, your exemption, that type of stuff?
So from exploring, starting my own drone applicating business in California, I notice it's from the drone side, it's not too much different in terms of regulatory. You do, I imagine you have to have a state pesticide license in most of these states, from what I've heard. So
Yeah.
you do need to have a pest control business license. You do need to have a pest control pilot's license. So I wouldn't call that too much red tape compared to some of the other things I've seen in California. The big thing that I think is different in California that I think happens from other states is the grower, in order to apply material to his crop, he needs to have a recommendation from what's called the PCA, a pest control advisor. So because of that, that's like almost like a prescription, right? And
Okay.
so the
Yeah.
grower doesn't get to decide, unless he has his own in-house PCA or he has his own license. So, from a marketing and from a, approaching the grower standpoint, there's someone else typically that you have to interact with to seek and get the business.
So somebody that has no experience that's wanting to try to start a spray drone business in California, what are some words of wisdom you could give him or her?
Let's see. Talking about regulatory and red tape, had to make a spreadsheet the other day just because I couldn't believe the amount of certifications I had to get. I'm up to like 22 now. So between
Gee.
tests, and licenses, and and I'm including business licenses and
Yeah, 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 yeah,
categories
yeah.
on my
Yeah.
pesticide. But there's quite a bit. So just be organized, be diligent, and give yourself some time. I think I started this process in late September.
So when I started this, I was looking at all the stuff I had to go through. It was literally to the point where I was like, screw this. This is almost too much. I'm done, because it was literally that much. But then I had to think, I was thinking of not doing it because of that. And I was like, well, that's a market in itself. It's keeping the market from becoming flooded, although there's a lot of people still getting in it because they're not scared of that. Do you feel that in any way? Like, it's like the market is growing, people are getting in it, but it's growing slow because of all the rules and regs.
I think California's behind the rest of the Midwest when it comes to drone applications. I think that's in part because of the red tape, and it's also because what we talked about, the higher gallons per acre applications.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely there is a market because the expansive regulatory issues that we deal with in California. I just read there was a study, I think, from Cal Poly. They stated, I think, regulatory cost for crop production was just under 2% in the early 2000s, and it's over 12%. So
Jeez.
yeah,
That
it's
is
tough.
wild. Jeez. So your buddies that you were working with, or the aerial company, they know you're going to expand. Guys are
Yes.
still getting along?
I wouldn't say that. They wish me well in my journey, and I will say this. They're very forward thinking. If, like I said, if I had an airplane and a helicopter, I would integrate a drone. A lot of their competition, refused or didn't think of doing that. So, they understand the landscape, and we'll see. We'll see what happens this upcoming season.
That's a nice way to put it. There was something I was going to ask you. So obviously you're going to scale. The cost of entry to get into drones, would you say that that's was that a big hurdle for you to be like, okay, I'm going to invest, what did you invest, 50 to 60,000 in your drones for 2 drones?
So the 2 drones, the 2 T50s were my previous employer. So
Oh, okay.
going into investment, so what I did was actually I was leasing a T40 for my whole 44807 and my 137. Actually, after I get off this podcast, I'm going to go out and buy a drone. So
Nice.
I'm going to go. Most likely, I'm going to be getting a T100 here soon. The investment's going to be, well over that. When I talk about truck and trailer and all that,
Yeah.
it is going to be north of $100,000. Yeah.
So, okay, if you're willing to share, because you guys are doing higher volume, what's an average cost for aerial application in that area of the California?
What I'm going to say is it's much greater than what I've heard about in the Midwest. I don't think we could make it work. I think I've heard as low as $8 out there in the Midwest. That just absolutely, we need to be, well over double that.
Yeah.
So what I can say is, if we're competing, we're not going to compete on the speed or the acreage with an airplane or helicopter, but at the rates that those guys are charging, it can make sense if you have a wide open field. Typically with the drone, we're getting tougher jobs, so we need to charge north of that and target the growers that want those quality jobs, that need the jobs that the airplane and helicopter can't get into, and that are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's tough in this landscape, because not only is farming's tough, it's been tough for everybody in the nation. It's really tough out here in California.
It's been a tough year. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, obviously you've had connections in the grower space. You've had those connections, but how do you try to get new work? Like, what are you doing to make those connections of people that you maybe haven't ever talked to? What are you doing to try to find new clients?
So, it's funny, talking to people that I knew, the connections I've had, or they've introduced me to others, they already knew about me. They said, oh, I heard that drone was flying over there. Or somebody told me the drone was flying and we went and drove over there. So there's a lot of people that actually watched me from afar. I never knew we were there.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it is you try to talk to a grower and their neighbors. And then, like I said, there's a network of pest control advisors. And so, if they like your work, they're going to be, having you do jobs for the different growers. So it's like networking, like anything else.
Yeah. And is most of your work is directly with the grower, not with like co-ops? We call them co-ops. It's where the farmer would go to buy his chemical. Here, oftentimes, we would work for that company because they've already made the connection with the farmer. Is that do you work at all like that?
I think there will be some of that. I haven't worked directly with any co-ops up to this point, but I know that in the tree nut industry and dairy, there's definitely some co-ops, and that probably will help facilitate some work. But mostly it's typically directly with the grower.
Interesting. It's just so crazy to think here in the States how vast our farming industry is. Like, I was so small mind thinking. I was thinking it's corn and beans. And then I went to the Spray Drone End User Conference, and I figured out very quickly that it is vastly different from California to Maine to Minnesota to now California, all the different crops that we actually grow in the States. I personally don't have a lot of experience doing rice, but then I sell drones to people that are spraying rice, and they're doing 5-gallon work like yourself. And so it's just really cool. That's why I like the podcast. That's why I like being able to sit down with guys like yourself, and I appreciate you taking the time, is just to open up the more brain thoughts of other people that might be in that area. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that much alfalfa is grown in California, or that there's, these nut trees out here and stuff like that. So it's really cool. Do you have something?
Oh, no, I'm just saying it's definitely different. There's, it is California, but we've, there's plenty of acreage everywhere. And, for the longest time, listening to your podcast, wondering why the Midwest was adopting to the technology so fast and we weren't. And, spraying over the summer, doing my research, starting my own business, I'm starting to understand why. But now we're at a point where it can be adopted out here.
Is there pasture land close to you, like where there's like beef cows, where you go and spray for broadleaf or anything like that in pastures?
Yeah, I haven't heard of any of that work being done with drones, but there's definitely some beef cattle out here.
Oh. So you said you're going to go buy a drone, and obviously I sell drones. What makes an applicator like yourself choose a drone retailer? Like, what I'm trying to figure this out, as the business is growing. What would make you go to a guy down the street or buy from a guy online in the Midwest? What would be the difference for you?
I think it's just like these growers. I think you need to find someone that you can trust. Unfortunately, if the industry was more developed in California, but if I was out there in your area, I would find someone more closer by that could support me. Because I think the biggest fear for me is if I go down, how am I going to get back up right away? I think the easiest solution is to have 2 drones or multiple aircraft. But, it'd be really nice. There's actually a retailer in Northern California that I was talking to, and it's just like, I know that if there's something that happens, he's going to stock parts. He's going to be able to throw a drone in the back of his truck and come down to me. And that's, I think, the most important thing.
That's good. That's good to know. So essentially, you're going to buy local because you know that guy is going to stock parts. That way, if you do go down, you're not down for a day and a half to overnight something. You can just go there and pick up those parts.
Yeah.
That's good. That's valuable for me because I am trying to continue to figure out the industry. I sell drones all over the country. Obviously, you heard I'm coming to California. I've sold drones in California, but I want to know how can I serve guys like yourself better. And it sounds like it's going to get to the point where, the more drones that are out there, we are going to have locations somewhat central in the busy hubs. And to hear it come from you, it's clear that is how applicators would prefer to transact, is with somebody that's local, that they can quickly get parts if they need to. How far would you be willing to drive to go get those parts? Obviously, you and I are, what would it take to drive from here? Probably 40 hours?
Yeah, quite a bit. So, I mean, I don't know. I would like to be back in a day. So, but it's whatever it takes. You've got to take care of that grower. So, whatever it takes.
I'm just trying to figure out how many it would take around a certain area. So, like yourself. So, if you'd have to drive 3 hours one way, that's not a deal breaker for you?
No, I would say probably 5. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good.
Because you hope you're not doing that every day. You're hoping that's a rare occasion.
Yep.
It's a hard day, and it is what it is.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And the guy that you can buy from, is he less than 5 hours?
Yeah, he's right about there. Right about there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just asking you those questions for myself as we're building out this network, NuWay Ag. And so because, dude, I want to see nothing more than a guy like yourself be super successful if I can sell you equipment and service, give you parts, get you parts in a way that's never been done before in the past. And right now, it's just so hard to do that if I'm on the other side of the country. But keep in mind, I'm not locked into this area. So I am looking at doing something like that. So thanks for sharing that.
And I think with the applicators too, they're going to be servicing their own equipment because that's just something they need to do. But as this industry grows, I see growers getting more involved. If you've got a certain amount of acreage, especially out here in California, some of these, there's some, farmers that are dealing with, tens of thousands of acres.
Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be a need for, service centers, hubs, places that they can go. So areas like this one, it makes sense for somebody to be out here ready to, deal with parts and service. Not just for the applicators, but the growers themselves.
How many guys would you know that have drones somewhat within, 3 hours of you?
That I know, gosh, I think I bet you there's less than 10 outfits within 3 hours of me. But I think that's going to be rapidly expanding. Talking to some of the larger farming outfits that I'm aware of, they're all in talks to do their own drone thing. And so some of these guys, I know a single company, if they decide to do drones, they'll probably buy 10, maybe more. Just the amount of acres they have, if they decide it's the technology they want to use, they're going to go all in.
Wow. That is crazy. So a guy asks you, am I too late to get in to start his own spray drone business in the area? What do you tell him?
I don't think so. I think as the technology progresses, you look at what an airplane and a helicopter can cover. As as the technology progresses and we're able to, take some of that acreage, I think there's plenty of room for all of us. I really do.
I usually try to break it down by county. Like in my county, there's a few 100,000 acres of farmland. It's like there could be 10 trailers here, right? If there's 500,000 acres to do, dude, we'd all have to do like more than 50,000 acres each. And to try to do 50,000 acres with a drone, it's a big feat. Not saying that it's not going to be done, in the future, but it's like there's so many acres that need sprayed or, need treated in some way. There's plenty to go around. Will there be competition in the future? Potentially, but it just takes so many drones to cover these acres. And like you said, I with time, there will be acres that will be taken over that airplanes are doing currently. Now, your higher volume, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to shake out. Bigger drones, bigger payload. That Cirrus that they release, 40 gallons, that is a big friggin' drone, and you can hardly move the thing by yourself. And so how's that going to work? Bigger drones, I get it, right? Bigger drones, bigger payload. But at some point, what's too big?
Yeah, I think the industry is going to just continue to rapidly change. I mean, if you really ask me right now, and this could change, but I think the future for some of these big fields would be to use, I can't remember, is it Pelican? That remote control airplane. Yeah. I think these large fields will use that, and what you'll do is you go in there with a drone, you'll get the edges with, a DJI or, Cirrus drone. And the people that are doing the edges are going to be the spotter for that airplane, that's flown from, miles away. I think that's probably the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't see it because I don't see fields in my area that are big enough to do that. But that's not saying that, your fields out there, they're obviously huge compared to here. I did see that thing flying on Instagram, and I'm like, doggone it. That is pretty crazy to think that thing can terrain follow that well. It's a fixed wing. Right? I think that's what you're talking about. It's a fixed wing airplane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking you guys probably have service roads out there that don't have power lines, and it could probably land right on the road and fill it up there, huh? Or does it have to land?
And I think there's airports. There's a lot of private strips, and there are public places where the crop dusters. There used to be a lot more crop dusters than there is now. And so there are strips that you can access. If that plane goes as fast as they say it does and it has decent battery power, you can travel a few miles, get the middle of the field, and get back to the airport.
That's interesting. All right. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time. If you have anything else you'd like to add it in here. If there's somebody in your area that's a farmer, I don't know if farmers listen to this, but how do they get in contact with you?
Call me. The name of my company is Virelo, Virelo. Look me up on Instagram or Facebook, Virelo.ag, and be happy to come take a look. We could run in demos this off season and get some applications done.
Sweet. All right. Well, like I said, I appreciate you being on here. I'm curious to know what you think of the T100 once you start running it. I will just give you my little bit of feedback on it. It's like, I thought it's going to be too big. So when I went to China and I was messing with it there, I'm like, doggone it, this is a big drone and it's higher, swapping your batteries. But after getting the unit here and running it for a little while, I am impressed. We're doing 2 to 3 gallon work when we're doing fungicide, but it is an 80-acre drone all day long at 2 gallons with one guy swapping batteries and filling tanks. So I'm curious to see how it's going to increase the efficiency of your operation doing that high volume stuff, because you throw the extra sprayer nozzle kit on that sucker, that thing's going to pump out 10 gallons a minute. So I am curious to see what, where your acres per hour go.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to operating it.
Sweet. Alrighty. Well, there you go, guys. I'm listening to Eugene in California. I appreciate it again. We'll hopefully be talking soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Yeah.